Hello and welcome to the 3-time award-winning Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you love adventure, challenge, and hearing from women who share their stories and provide top tips and advice to help you take on your own personal challenges, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. New episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, with bonus episodes happening on a Thursday. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me, with Tough Girl challenges, give shout outs, and recommend other Tough Girl podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Alexandra Garcia. I go by Alec. I was born, raised, grew up, and just pretty much lived throughout my early adult years in the west coast of Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico, for those who maybe aren't familiar, is a small island right smack in the center of the Caribbean. I grew up in a idyllic childhood and neighborhood, playing with my neighbors and going to the beach, going to my parents' farm when they bought it when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and really spending a lot of my time in nature. It's interesting now as an adult and living in the United States how we use the term outdoorsy, and we have this outdoors-centered childhood or growing here in the States. It was a different feel, but it ended up giving me the same experience when I was in Puerto Rico. So we did a lot of hikes and just low-key camping trips in my parents' farm. We would go out, my family and I would go out to El Yunque National Rainforest and other parts in the island. And that, I think, is the genesis of my love for the outdoors. You asked where I'm currently based in. I am based in a small town in the mountains of western North Carolina here in the United States. It's right at the base of Pisgah National Forest, and it really mirrors a lot of my childhood and experience growing up in the mountains in Puerto Rico. As crazy as that may sound, there are a lot of similarities. Sometimes I feel very at home here, and it's part of the reason that I love this part of the country. For me, the outdoors, especially when I came to the United States almost 10 years ago, the outdoors was a way for me to really connect with those pieces of me that I lost when I moved here. I moved here for job opportunities, for growth opportunities, all great things, but there was still a part of me that lost the experience of being with family or of engaging in nature in the ways that I used to. And for me, finding my way back to a trail and to the dirt, be it trail running, camping, backpacking, mountain biking, it's been a way for me to get something back from this whole experience and reconnect with the pieces of myself that have changed and evolved through these last 10 years, in between leaving Puerto Rico and hoping to come back one day.
You mentioned, you grew up around sort of on the coast and by the beach. So were you encouraged to swim and spent time like in the waves and, swimming and boogie boarding and surfing? Was you encouraged with that?
Well, I think this is something very specific to my family. My mom doesn't swim. So early in childhood, my brothers and I have two younger brothers. We did take swimming lessons and we were encouraged to learn and practice and swim, but we also weren't encouraged to venture out. And at this point in my life, I'm 32 years old. I still respect the water. Out of all the places in the outdoors that I could explore and, have an adventure, I think water is still the one that for me, even from someone that grew up in the coast, it's still that one piece that I call it respect, but I do have some sort of apprehension. I should say that over the years, and this has been something very common in Puerto Rico, every year, many tourists and even some locals, they perish from being pulled by riptides. And close to where I live or where I grew up in the northwest coast of Puerto Rico, it's called Aguadilla and Isabela and Rincon. Very big surf towns, very popular among locals and tourists alike. But there are very strong undercurrents that year after year do take the lives of quite a few people. And for me, that was something that I kept very present. And with my family, especially with my mom not knowing how to swim, she just kept it as something that she was a little worried and scared of, and in turn sort of scared me. But I do love snorkeling. I love swimming in the ocean just within safe boundaries.
And you mentioned your parents' farm. Was this like more like a homestead, or was this like a commercial farming project, or was it just
Oh
like
my goodness.
yeah, what was it like?
Yeah, so every time I go, it's just this beautiful memory of what it was and what it's turned into and what it can be. But my parents own a farm about 30 minutes from where I grew up, so still on the northwest coast, but towards more of the mountainous area. That farm, initially it was just, a piece of land. And in the past 20 years that my parents have had this farm, they've really turned it into quote unquote a commercial operation. And the reason I say the quotations is because there's still a lot of the farm that is virgin forest or that is not commercially operated. For in Puerto Rico, the farms, the typical farms are not like US farms that are humongous and they have this automatic kind of operation and they have hundreds or thousands of acres. This is a pretty small farm that deals with what we would call specialty crops. Specialty crops include plantain, breadfruit. I think my parents' farm is the largest breadfruit producer in Puerto Rico, which isn't saying a lot because Puerto Rico is small, but it's still a beautiful crop area, incredible trees. Breadfruit is a staple in the Puerto Rican diet. And beyond breadfruit and plantain, there are other crops like eggplants. And I mean, over the years, there's been eggplants, pineapple, oranges, different types of peppers, different types of tubercules like batata or ñame or yuca, staples of the Caribbean diet, but also things that we can use for a food processing plant that is also in the farm. So the farm has taken many shapes in the past 20 years. One thing that we love about it is that there's a small river slash creek that crosses the farm. And one of my earliest memories of spending time in the farm is hiking with my dad and brothers. We would go just barefoot and just walk from one end to the creek to the other about a mile and a half and then come back. We would fish for freshwater shrimp and we would, pick and throw stones here and there and we would find new areas of the river. And for us, that was how we spent time together and in nature. So sometimes I look back and I'm like, no wonder I like to have long days on trail, or I like to spend a full Saturday just in the mountains. It's something that was bred in me from very early on. I just didn't know it.
The mountains do hold sort of like a special place in your heart. And in 2017, you decided to climb Kilimanjaro. And I'd love to hear more about, that experience, why you decided to do it, why it was important to you, and why that was almost like quite a pivotal moment in your life.
Yeah, it was a pivotal moment in my life. So when I moved to the United States in 2015, I said I started heading to the outdoors as a way to connect back with some of the pieces of me that were lost once I moved. I had a very rough transition process from Puerto Rico to the United States, and the outdoors really were that thing that like glued me together when I was torn apart. But over the years, in the next 2 years, I got pretty into hiking and backpacking, I would spend a lot of time, mostly on my own, on trail. And I just started looking for that, that next thing that I could really work towards and push myself to achieve. And at the time, that came in the form of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I have always wanted to go to Africa. I had always wanted to go to Mount Kilimanjaro, not necessarily to climb it, but ever since I was a child, I would have this dream of seeing the mountain. And when the opportunity comes and my now husband, then boyfriend, and I planned this trip, it gave me something very tangible and at the time I thought was very difficult, like to the limits of what I thought I could do, considering I was born and raised at sea level. And I took that training and that preparation for Mount Kilimanjaro so seriously that I started calling it, oh, this is my difficult pursuit of the year. At the time, I had a corporate job. I was working at an electric utility as an engineer. Vacation time or holiday time was short, as is in the United States. And for me, I was like, okay, out of everything I can do and within the short time that I have available to do something for myself, this is going to be the one thing that I focus on. And I spent close to a year preparing, training, doing these like adventure races. And I went on my first solo backpacking trip to really nail things down, to really know that I was as prepared as I possibly could for this big, big thing for me, climbing Africa's tallest peak. And when I went there, I felt just absolutely confident in what I could do. Of course, there were still variables that I had never been exposed to. Up to that point, I had climbed up to 14,000 feet in Colorado. There was still another 5,000 feet that I didn't know how I was going to react to. But in terms of my preparation physically and mentally, I knew it was there and I trusted it. And it was a full 7 or 8 day trip. And every single day, I just felt like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And it culminated in a successful summit. Both my now husband and I summited and then went back down. And it just completely changed the narrative of my idea of what I could accomplish. And ever since, it was like, okay, I'm going to try a difficult pursuit in 2018 and then in 2019 and then in 2020. And then it just kept evolving into this thing I focused on every year. And that's been sort of the motto and approach to life ever since, truly.
Oh, I love that. So what did you do the following year?
So the following year, 2018, I did the Grand Canyon rim to rim. So I had never been to the Grand Canyon. And now thinking about it, I'm like, that is a bold move. But the Grand Canyon, there is a traverse that people call the Grand Canyon rim to rim. It can start at either the north or south rim and cross over to the other one. So it goes from the top of the rim, which is about, actually, don't quote me on it, but it's about 5 or 6 thousand feet above the lowest point of the rim, which is at Phantom Ranch and the crossing of the Colorado River. So you start about 5 or 6 thousand feet up, and then you lose all that elevation, and then you have to gain it on the way up. And a lot of people, especially in the time of year that I went, which is August/September, the conditions in the Grand Canyon can be pretty extreme in terms of heat. So there are a lot of signs and warnings about not attempting the a rim to rim or going down to the lowest point of the rim if you're not in good condition. And in 2018, that became my focus. I was like, I'm going to do everything I need to focus on to make sure that I can do this Grand Canyon rim to rim. At that time, I didn't trail run. So this was still, I was hiking. I didn't want to really push myself running. I was kind of scared of it. And I said, okay, I'm going to shoot for 12 hours crossing the rim to rim or completing the rim to rim. And that for me was my difficult pursuit of the year. About 22 miles ended up being, and I did it in about 10 hours. Very hot day, very long, very stressful. And after that, I was like, okay, what's next? It's been big things, smaller things year after year. I've chosen diversity. I've chosen new sort of sports just to kind of keep myself learning, keep myself engaged, and keep it fun because this is not difficult pursuits is not I'm not here to make any money. I'm not here like this isn't about anything other than having fun and challenging myself. So I've tried to keep it different year after year so that that can actually happen. I have fun.
Are you running now?
So, yes and no. So since then, yes, I have done ultra marathons. I did this event that I call it. It's an event for myself where I through hiked slash jogged a portion of the Appalachian Trail or the AT in Virginia. I did that over a weekend. It was about 110 miles. I have also since then started mountain biking and focused more on ultra endurance mountain biking events. So, like I said, I've tried to keep it fun, engaging, different to see where does the limit exist? And so far it hasn't. So far it's been a new limit is set and I just shoot for that a little bit more next year and then the goalpost always changes because I just find that I can do more and I can be more and I can dial it back down if I need to, but every year is an adventure in itself.
So, how do you approach your difficult pursuits? Like, do you have systems in place, or not necessarily a plan, but like a method in terms of once you've picked your pursuit, what you're going to go after, how you almost like work backwards to, like, to get it booked in, to figure out your new training, the finance, the nutrition. How does that normally work? Do you have a system?
I am fairly chaotic individual. There is somewhat of a system, and then mostly it's just kind of learning as I go because I think one thing that's very has been clear to me in these past few years has been while I grew up, spending time in the outdoors in a nature focused childhood, as one may call it, there were still a lot of things that preparation, nutrition, like camping essentials or backpacking essentials. I had none of that background knowledge before I came to the United States and I started learning. And one thing that I clearly remember, Sarah, was for years, I did not understand layering, the concept of layering. Hey, I'm a Caribbean girl. We don't need layers. Um,
Bikini, that's it.
but in the United States, especially obviously in the winter time, I did not understand the concept of layering, like what needs to be thicker, what do you wear first, how do you delayer when you start getting warm. I did not understand that. And that is just one of many examples that I've had of things that I have needed to learn kind of on the go as I'm trying something new, I discover that I am completely clueless about this one particular aspect. And sometimes it's been nutrition, other times it's been gear, other times, as I said, it's been layering. And the system has been just continuous exploration. That is the basis of my system. Continuous exploration leads to uncovering of new ideas and new learnings and new challenges for me. However, when I do decide on, when I've decided on difficult pursuits, I mentioned this with the Kilimanjaro experience. I got very devoted to my training. More than anything, it was my training, physical and emotional, mental training. And that could take many forms. It was not just training at the gym, which I do and I do constantly, but it was also training, taking a week long or weekend long backpacking trip to really figure out my system with my gear. Of course, with experience and throughout the years, I have been able to maybe pull that part of planning, dialing it back down, just because I have now an experience belt under me. But in those first few years, it was definitely a lot more chaotic. Now, my approach to planning a difficult pursuit, and I will give you this example. After 2020, I decided to start thinking of my own ideas for difficult pursuits. So I've never been one to think, oh, I want to complete the 7 summits or I want to do all of the Colorado 14ers. The idea of focusing on lists that other people like want to complete, that's just never been my vibe, to be honest. I've always wanted to just use a little bit of creativity with my own difficult pursuits and figure out what that means for me. And after 2020, and especially in like 22, 23, I said that I wanted to focus on challenges that I could do, complete, or plan in Puerto Rico. And that is something that over the past few years has been really central to actually all of my life. The idea of going back to Puerto Rico and bringing back this experience and creativity with me to the island has been my focus for the past few years. And in 2023, I did this. Uh, we call it the first time because we don't know if there's anyone else that has done it, but there is one backpacking trail in Puerto Rico. It is 35 miles long, so it's, nothing too crazy. It goes from the coastal side of eastern Puerto Rico in this town called Fajardo, and it traverses about 10 miles of coastline and it goes up towards El Yunque National Rainforest. It's a beautiful hike, backpack, trail run, whatever you want to do it, going through what I call the best of both worlds. So you go through incredible, like pristine coastline, and then you go into a lush, vibrant, humid rainforest. And I decided to do that as my first project in Puerto Rico. And for that, I had a very well defined system of not just training, but also doing practice runs, performing trail maintenance to learn about the trail, identify a lot of things on Google Earth, Google Maps, plan routes with GPS devices, and really dial in my nutrition on an hour by hour basis so that I could take what I needed and only what I needed on that 35-mile run and for that to be successful within a 12-hour window. So I've gotten clearer about certain things, but remember, I say one year I'm going to do a bike ride, and then other years I do mountaineering. So the system is a little chaotic in and of itself because I don't have one lane that I focus on. I just have a choose your own adventure every year, and sometimes that can be very drastic to the year before.
I mean, with the adventures as well, obviously there's this physical element which changed every year. So whether it's running, hiking, backpacking, etc. But I think one element that, and it'll be interesting to hear your perspective, that probably stays the same is around the mental side of taking on these challenges, especially, when things do get tough and maybe things don't go to plan. And I'm just wondering, how do you manage the mental side of your difficult pursuits? What does that look like, and what are the tips and tricks that you're using to mentally get you through the ups and the downs?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that because as time has passed, there's been two things that have happened that kind of like contradict each other. And one is experience, right? You get experience, you expose yourself to new and progressively more difficult things, and you get that confidence, and you have this little voice in the back of your mind that says you've done hard things before, like you can do this. Visualization is something that I've done many times to really put myself in the moment, and that can happen even months before the actual event. But then the second aspect, which kind of also relates to time passing and experience, is that, like, let's be real, like, as you get older and the responsibilities of life get a little bit more complicated, you also have that tug of stress and added worries in your life. And those things I say sometimes oppose each other because they are both emerging from experience and from time passing, but one adds in a positive direction and one can add in a negative. And I think to me, Sarah, being outdoors is my way of disconnecting from those stresses and those worries of regular life. And it's my opportunity to almost sort of turn my brain off and really just focus on the very crude and straightforward logistics of what I'm doing. And that's what's been really helpful. I think the I think the mental part has given me more struggles during the training piece than the actual doing, because during the training piece you're still connected to work and connected to the news cycle and connected to what needs to get done daily, versus during the event, it's the culmination of months of planning and preparation, and you just get to turn everything else off and just go. So there's an aspect of mental fortitude that is just even better during the event or the difficult pursuit because it's my chance to disconnect. But while I'm getting ready, it requires visualization and also a constant reminder of you've done hard things before. And Sarah, a few years ago, I started realizing how this motto and this idea of difficult pursuits can really translate to a lot in life. When I started difficult pursuits, sometimes I think of it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I had so much time to like go to the gym and like spend time planning routes. And where has that time gone? Like, I don't feel I have that time anymore. But it has been kind of a blueprint for the rest of my life because now, in the years since I started difficult pursuits, I have lost a job. I went through a challenging job application and like job finding process. I have started a business, and all of those things are difficult pursuits. And to have that trail experience behind me and being able to use those trail experience for off trail challenges has been also incredibly helpful and encouraging because I can pull from a trail experience to help me through some tough life situations.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that I thought was really interesting is when people normally talk about challenges, they talk about the physical and the mental, and emotions almost don't necessarily come into it. And this is something that I discovered for myself on the Appalachian Trail. Like I was like, I knew what I was doing, knew my training. Mentally, I'd prepared like my
Hmm.
routines, everything else. But managing my emotions was like, it came as honestly a complete shock to me. It's like, because, and
Yeah.
you're physically exhausted. But what was interesting is when you started talking, the words you said was physical and and you said emotions is the second
Hmm.
thing. And I was wondering, how do you manage your emotions, especially when you are dealing with stressful situations, both on the trail and off the trail? And what are the sort of the tips and tricks to manage those emotions? Like, do you manage them or do you just
That's a really good question. So I think there's an element of both. I go through a roller coaster of emotions when I'm doing these difficult pursuits. And lately in the past few years, they've been more of single day, like a long day on trail, but it's been less of a multi-day challenge and more of a very hard, difficult one day. I think for me, I love initially letting the emotion out. Sometimes I want to cry, so I'll just start crying. And I'm like acknowledging that I'm stressed or I hurt or I'm annoyed or I'm hot and how does that make me feel? And I just let it get some air. I let it out. And then I start thinking about what it is that I'm doing and why it is that I'm there. And sometimes a little tough love on oneself is also valid. I remind myself that I chose to be out there. And I'm talking specifically about trail experiences, right? But I'll have that added element of you are doing this because you want. And at any point, if you also want, you can scale it back or you can quit or you can do whatever. At the end of the day, those on trail experiences, however much you planned for them, they are actually trivial, right? They're almost like made up challenges for yourself to push yourself to find where that limit is. However, when I am off trail and I have these challenges, one, I do I do also let them out. I let them breathe. I acknowledge them. I'm fairly good about talking about my feelings. I do find or seek help mostly in just friends that I can just, hey, I have something on my mind. I have a very good relationship with my brothers. I will do that too. And one thing that I have done since 2018, it hasn't been extremely consistent, but I do it at least twice a week, and it's journaling. I love to write. I would love to publish more of my work in the near future. And when I say more, it's because I write for outdoor magazines here in the US. So I have published some of my work in print and online publications, but I do it as a lifeline for me, right? So I have my little diary. Nobody reads it. It's just some days my emotions come out in English, some days they come out in Spanish, and I just write whatever's on my mind in that way. So I have found that writing and putting things down has been extremely helpful in synthesizing those emotions and going back to them a week later and reading my words and being like, oh, wow, yeah, I was really upset, or I was definitely annoyed or sad or elated. I could also be very happy. And I think for me, obviously, doing that has been extremely helpful. Also, sometimes it's not about a difficult pursuit. Sometimes it's just about taking a walk in the woods. I love going out into nature and just like hearing the sounds, smelling the smells, the earth and the fungi, and like dipping my feet in the water. And sometimes that's all you need. Not saying, right, that finding someone to talk to or getting like professional help isn't necessary, but most of these simple acts of kindness towards myself, being out in nature, writing, talking to a friend, have really gone a long way.
in terms of women in the outdoors who inspire you? Obviously, with regards to like representation, it can be so powerful when you see other women who look like you doing the things that inspire you. You know, I mean, obviously, you're an incredible role model and inspiring so many other women. But have there been women who have inspired you, or have you sort of been figuring out this path for yourself?
I have one that immediately comes to mind, and her name is Sunny Strower. Sunny lives in Kanab, Utah. Sunny is German. She has been in the US for many years. And I will give a little brief fangirl moment for Sunny. Sunny has a background from Harvard Business School. She used to work in corporate America. She had a very well-defined career path ahead of her in a lucrative, job segment. And Sunny, with that preparation and that future that she had almost guaranteed, basically, she just felt like that life was not for her. And she left it all to just go kind of vagabond around the world for some time and climb mountains. And she was doing that before she quit, but it just became this like tug of war within herself of the life she was leading in her job and the prospects of her professional and financial future versus this thing that she was doing on the side or every chance she got, which was climbing and exploring the mountains in the US and then abroad. And the reason she's such a role model to me, there are many things I could say about Sunny, but I just felt the exact same way 8 years ago. I was in the spot, as an engineer, with people telling me like, "Oh, you could run this place," and that pulls at you, right? And you're like, "Oh, maybe I can. Maybe I do have. Maybe I can make, I can be this like big boss and make a lot of money." Yeah. But there was this tug within me, and I was like, I can't figure out what to do because everyone is telling me that I could be this, you know, big player in 10, 20 years, but I do not I don't want that for myself. And Sunny's example just gave me the courage for me to make those decisions for myself, regardless of what other people were telling me. Her example has helped me accept that, hey, you are this very well prepared person. If you wanted to, you could go back to this, corporate ladder climbing life if that's what you want, but you know that that's not what fills you. It's this other thing and it's these other ventures and it's being with your family and working alongside your family and it's continuously looking for the next difficult pursuit. And it's allowed me in some weird way to accept the choices that I'm making for my life and saying this may not be orthodox and some people may think that I'm not making the right choice, but as long as I'm very clear within myself about what this choice is for me, then this is the way to go. And Sunny's story helped me get there myself. And then in the past years, I've worked with Sunny. She and I and a few other women, we co-founded the Awesome at Scholarship Foundation. And for those who don't know, the Awesome at Scholarship Foundation is an organization that aims to make the big mountains accessible to more women and girls. We have a mission not just for increasing accessibility for women and girls, but it's also about gender equality in the mountains. And for the past 4 years, it's been our joy to work on this project where we have offered scholarships to, I would say at this point, it's over close to 25 women probably, to climb mountains like Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, to go to the Cordillera Blanca in Peru, to have their first mountaineering experience on Mount Baker for girls as young as 14, 15 years old. And Sunny, it was her baby, it was her idea, but she pulled me in and she's given me these opportunities to really flourish within the spaces that I want and that I know I can grow in. And I'm eternally grateful to her for all she's done for me and the way she sees me, because sometimes I don't even see it for myself, but she kind of sees beyond my sometimes insecurities or my worries, and she like tells me, "No, Alex, you're a badass. You just need to get over this hump." So I'm eternally grateful to her, not just as a role model, but also as a friend.
Sunny's amazing. She's been on the Tough Girl podcast before
Hmm.
and shared more of her story. So totally understand where you're coming from. I'll share the links to those episodes so that people can listen to her and connect and hear some of the the badass things that she has done, which have been so inspiring. What's going to be your difficult pursuit for 2025? What have you got on the cards? Have you decided yet?
So I've been playing with that a little bit. I do have a 100-kilometer mountain bike race in April. I don't necessarily think of that as my difficult pursuit. I am seeing how the year unfolds because there is a lot on my work plate that still needs to be ironed out in a way. But some things I'm considering, Sarah, I will be in France in early July, and if the cards are right, I am going to try and climb Mont Blanc.
Oh, amazing.
We shall see. I also would want to, this is something that I plan to do for 2025, but it might bleed into 2026. I want to set a fastest known time for the Caribbean's highest point, which is in the Dominican Republic, not in Puerto Rico. It is close to 10,500 feet of elevation, which for in Caribbean standards, that is a lot. And at this point, there's no fastest known time set for women, either supported or unsupported. So I would want to attempt that before the year ends. And as I said earlier, I really want to focus on projects in Puerto Rico and maybe, outside of Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. And I have a few ideas that will need a little bit more structured training on the running front versus biking, and will also need a lot more time, and not just time, but people involved in logistics. And that is basically a run crossing Puerto Rico east to west. And then in the future, this is a future project, I would want to do what I call the Puerto Rico 360, which is just exactly what it sounds like, just doing a lap around the island. But I think that's close to 300 miles, depending on how I route it. So those two ideas are definitely booked for, maybe 2026, 2027. As I said, I want to focus on Puerto Rico because I believe in my heart that Puerto Rico has incredible natural resources, and we definitely have other available resources to make adventure sports and trail sports something much bigger than it actually is in the island. And for me, especially in the last few years of much political turmoil, I have wanted to make this idea of Puerto Rican projects or trail running projects or mountain biking projects in Puerto Rico happen for the benefit of Puerto Ricans first and foremost. So I'm excited to think about what that means, engage with local communities or running groups, and see what we can make out of that to increase accessibility of trail sports for the Puerto Rican people.
Amazing. That sounds absolutely incredible. And Alex, how can people connect with you? How can they support you on this journey, follow along with the journey? Where are you most active on social media? Where should they go?
I have been in this weird transition point with social media. I do use Instagram, still deciding what that means moving forward. But people can find me as Alexandra Maria Garcia _ on Instagram. I have a Blue Sky account, Alexandra Garcia, that I'm starting to use a little more often. And I will send you links to websites. I think that is my goal in the next 6 months is to transition to more introspective writing, more blog posts slash details about what I'm attempting or the things that I'm going for. I do think for me that Instagram, especially Instagram, has taken this form of, only sharing reels or
Mm.
it's forced, in my opinion, it's forced a certain type of content that I would love to stray away from just because I want to give details. I want to show lots of pictures. I want to have people, if they want, be able to get inside my head a little bit more and read about strategy and all these things that we've talked about at a high level. So I will send you those links. One is in Spanish because it is related to trail running in Puerto Rico. And like I said, I want to keep the focus on Puerto Rican people and accessibility based on their native language, my native language.
Absolutely. Send all those links. I'll make sure that they are included in the show notes so that people can connect, follow along, support, and be kept updated. But Alex, I would love for you to have the final words of advice and wisdom for other women who want to undertake difficult pursuits. They want to pursue their passions. They want to spend more time outdoors. What advice would you like to share? But please don't say just do it, and you can take that in any direction that you would like.
Yeah. I think we, like women, need to realize we complete difficult pursuits on a monthly, yearly, daily basis. We are powerhouses, and like I think we need to like really own that because, and this has happened to me many times, but I get in my own way. And I just say that something isn't technically within my grasp or I'm just not prepared enough and sometimes that is true. Sometimes I just need to work a little bit harder or prepare better, get some more training time, whatever that means. But if we're interested in completing difficult pursuits within the scope of the outdoors, I think one great thing to do is to find a community of people or women that can support that goal over a period of time. So, what I mean by that is if you want to do a 100-mile trail run at some point, we can start small. We can all start small and we can all start with a community. I have found communities to be the source of most of my learning and most of my confidence because when I do things with other people that are slightly faster, slightly more prepared, slightly more experienced than I am, every time I'm with them, I learn just a little tiny thing new that I can add to my own experiences. And some of this is scary. Some of this is, nerve-wracking. Some of this, like difficult pursuits goals, sound out of scope, out of reach. Running 100 miles or biking 24 hours straight, what is that? But I think if we pull it apart and take it day by day, week by week, and find that community, I think that we can definitely reach that goal in due time. If you had asked me this like 5 years ago, I would have just said, like, just do it. I think experience and just getting older have granted me some perspective. And I can certainly see why women, even if you say just do it, it's sometimes hard because it is nerve-wracking and there's been so many social conditions telling us that, oh, maybe you shouldn't go alone. Maybe you shouldn't go that far. Maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe you shouldn't do that. That's why that community, I think, is a central piece in how to move those goals forward.
I totally agree. And it's interesting because even like you many years ago, like that was my advice. Like I know I've been on podcasts, like just do it. Because because I I don't know, like obviously I'm so privileged that for me it was just a case of, well, you want to do something, well, you just book it in, work
Yeah.
backwards, put a plan in place. You
Mhm.
just do it. And then actually, I think it's only because I've, matured, and the more women that
Mhm.
I've spoken to and shared their experiences, it's like there are so many barriers for women. And I'm not saying those barriers stop women, but it's just
Mhm.
another challenge they've either got to go over, through, under, they've got to dismantle, they've got to move around, they've got to put, and that involves more effort and
Yeah.
thought and time and commitment, and sometimes even like more passion and more drive to keep
Yeah.
focused and to keep going. So it's not as simple as just saying, just do it. Which,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I am naturally the person that just does it. And sometimes I don't think things through. It's gotten me hurt. I've had multiple issues in the past few years where I've broken bones and I've needed surgery and here and there, because I am that person that doesn't filter a lot and just like does it. And it's gotten me a long ways. It's also obviously, like I said, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I am the person that just won't think things through too much and will just, like you said, just book it, just go for it, and then work my way back. But also, exactly to your experience, just growing up and actually, having my own personal difficult pursuits that haven't been straightforward, that have been very challenging, that have pushed me and, you know, made me rethink a lot of what I thought. Uh, I've gathered some empathy and perspective to be able to say, hey, even though I still am that person that generally just does it, I know that really doesn't work and doesn't go too far with many people. So
Yeah.
it's just part of experience.
Do you know what it really is? Growing up and getting older, and just becoming more, I suppose, more empathetic of what's happening and what's going on.
Hmm.
Alex, honestly, just incredible to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing more about your life, the journey that you've been on, your difficult pursuits, the challenges, the adventures, the incredible work that you're doing in this space, and the incredible work that you're doing in Puerto Rico and for Puerto Ricans. And I'm sorry I can't pronounce Puerto Rico, the beautiful way that you pronounce it, but I'm honestly, I'm so excited to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years. You're going to
Yeah, can I
achieve
share
so
just
much.
one more
Yeah.
thing? Because I do not want people to take away that difficult pursuits, like no one tells you what difficult is. You choose what difficult is to you, right? I've done that for years. What I have deemed difficult, sometimes other people have scoffed or laughed and said, "Oh, that's something so simple or that's done in a day." But you know what? For me, at the time, that was what was extremely challenging. And there is no pressure on making difficult abide to someone's definition. It's only yours. And that's what I love about this thing I started on a whim, and it's stayed with me for years because every year I get to decide what difficult means. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's scaled back, sometimes it's very extreme. But the point is that it's challenging me in new and diverse ways. And I'm taking something, learning from it, and making that feed into the next phase of my personal and outdoor slash athletic life. So the beauty of it is that it is yours and yours only to define. And that's what I have loved. And that's why I preach.
No, I love it. You define your difficult pursuit. You define what is your challenge, because it does
Hmm.
not matter what other people are doing. You've got to fit it into your life, your abilities, your time frame. So whether that's going after a 5K, a 50K, or a 500K, doesn't matter. Literally, it's like,
100%.
if it's taking you outside your comfort zone, that is difficult for you, you go for it. Like that's
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I'm going to go on a rant now.
Yeah. I'm here like, you go, girl.
Yeah. But Alex, honestly, incredible to speak to you. Best of luck with the future. And I can't wait to touch base in a couple of years to see what you've been up to.
Oh, wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much for this platform and for everything you do.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? I hope you're all keeping super well. It's Sarah, the host of the Tough Girl podcast. So a couple of things we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing a shout out, and I'm also going to be sharing who our next guest is going to be on the Tough Girl podcast. So first of all, big shout out to all the listeners, to you for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. It really does mean a lot. And I just wanted to say massive congratulations to Paula, who has just completed the British Heart Foundation 30 Days Strong Women's Challenge. Very, very proud of you. An excellent challenge to undertake. Thank you so much for sharing in the Tough Girl tribe. And I love the fact that you are making sure to stay as fit and healthy as you possibly can. You're going to be celebrating your 64th birthday soon. So I wish you a wonderful birthday. Keep being a strong woman, keep doing challenges, keep pushing yourself. And thank you so much for sharing. If you want to learn more about the Strong Women Challenge, then please check out the British Heart Foundation and search Strong Women Challenge. Talking of strong women, let me share who our next guest is going to be. So on the 13th of May, we're going to be speaking with Angela Maxwell. So Angela has spent nearly 7 years walking around the world solo. She's covered over 20,000 miles across 4 continents and 16 countries. She's braved the Australian outback, battled the dengue fever in Vietnam, and faced the daily challenge of finding safe places to sleep, often in a tent. A self-described introvert and novice adventurer when she began, Angela's journey was as much an inner transformation as a physical one, fueled by fear, curiosity, and an unwavering commitment to explore what it means to live with courage. Angela walked with purpose, raising funds to support girls rescued from human trafficking, and continues that mission through mentoring and women's empowerment workshop. She's been featured by Lone Planet, BBC Travel, and Outside Magazine, and most recently became one of the first women to swim across the Caspian Sea, a feat that took 28 days and redefined her relationship with fear and endurance. She's now based in Wales for the moment. She's writing a book about her world walk and sharing her philosophy that courage is a verb. Whether she's walking, swimming, or simply choosing the unknown, Angela lives by example, proving that adventure doesn't require expertise, just the decision to begin. Thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, so make sure you subscribe so you never miss the inspiring journeys and incredible stories of women pushing boundaries. There are occasional bonus episodes which also go live on a Thursday. If you want to support the Tough Girl mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media in the world of adventure and physical challenges, you can support via Patreon. Join me in making a difference by signing up at Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. Your support really does make a massive difference. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.